Hello, my name is Grace Halstead, and on my wedding day, the front row meant for my parents stayed empty colder than the church pews themselves. I tried to hold my chin high, but every glance toward those vacant chairs burned. The sunlight through the stained glass painted the aisle in colors too warm for the chill in my chest. My friends from the base filled the chapel, their laughter carrying strength, but absence screamed louder than presence. I remembered another stage years earlier, the state science fair. I'd brought home a ribbon only to meet my father's flat stare. Victor had turned to my sister praising her cheerleading title. The same dismissal echoed now in these empty seats. The phone in my clutch vibrated. Diana's voice slipped through sharp as glass. Your father will not waste his reputation on this spectacle. Not a word of blessing. Not a question of happiness. Just a reminder that even on this day, image outweighed me. I swallowed the ache, pressed the phone dark, and walked back into the chapel. Caleb waited at the altar, steady as always. His eyes told me he saw the wound and would carry it with me. I took his hands, felt strength in his quiet resolve, and whispered the vows my parents had mocked. Then the doors creaked. Heads turned. A man strode in his tweed jacket, worn his steps unhurried. My breath caught. Arthur Halstead. The resemblance to Victor was undeniable, same eyes but softened by time and kindness. Whispers stirred. Some thought a stranger had wandered in. I knew better. He had chosen this day to return, and his presence steadied me more than all the polished pews ever could. The ceremony blurred into warmth, Captain Briggs slapping Caleb on the back, friends raising cheers. Yet Arthur's quiet form at the edge of it all felt like the truest blessing. When the photographs began, I pulled him forward. Stand with us, I insisted. Caleb and Briggs flanked me, Arthur on the other side. My smile was real, defiant. The click of the shutter froze more than joy. It captured proof my parents had buried for decades. I sent it to the family group chat without a word. A wedding photo, but also a blade. At the reception, fairy lights shimmered against dusk. I heard the phone again buzzing on the wooden table. First Diana, then Victor, then Lydia. One after another, their names flashed with urgency they had never spent on me. I powered it off, sliding it across to Caleb. He covered my hand with his, sealing the silence. They had seen Arthur's face. For the first time in years, silence was no longer their shield. Ghosts don't just haunt, they keep records. July heat pressed against Arthur's bookstore. Bell clicked behind me. Caleb stayed a step at my shoulder. Arthur emerged with an oilcloth bundle and the look of a man who had rehearsed this moment for years. You came, he said. The echo of Victor's jaw lived in his face without Victor's cruelty. You came yesterday, I answered. He had chosen my wedding for a reason. Ghosts prefer stages. Why now, I asked. Because you're married, he said, and free to choose your family. He set the bundle on a scarred table. When he unfolded it, a ledger breathed out a cellar smell cloth, frayed corners, blunt title stamped plain, Zoning Consortium. He turned pages with gloved care. Columns marched in neat ink parcels, fees, votes, approvals. Then the seams ink that thinned signatures, that shifted dates that didn't exist on any public agenda. Silenced board votes, Arthur murmured. Approvals rubber-stamped after closed doors. Another page showed Victor's confident loop over an altered line. Forged, I asked. Massaged, he said. Fraud that passes for competence until someone reads. He slid over a photocopied email thread, contingent leverage, expedited variance, outreach deferred. The vocabulary of pretty theft. Why didn't you stop him? I tried, Arthur said. He called me sentimental, then changed the company structure at midnight. One vote. Mine erased. Caleb traced a column. This isn't just family, he said. This is evidence. In Victor's marble world, everything was mirrors. Here it was fiber and ink, and it would not bend to charm. Arthur drew out a photo curled at the edges, two young men grinning against a sunlit Mustang. On the border, a promise to what we build together, V and A. He set it beside the ledger like a birth certificate next to a crime scene. He betrayed me once, he said. He will betray you too. I asked for copies. He had them ready, scans on a thumb drive, duplicates sealed in an envelope. If anything happens to me, he said, this goes to a reporter who still knows how to count. For the first time since the wedding, the ground tilted in my favor. The legacy of Halstead wasn't blood or honor. It was betrayal, and I would not inherit it quietly. We drove through Virginia pines. At home, the ledger sat on our kitchen table like contraband scripture. I brewed coffee and read until the light thinned, learning my father's handwriting the way a daughter should never have to. The numbers told a patient story, small thefts teaching the hand to take larger ones. Night fell. I saved scans to 2 hard drives and an encrypted cloud named files a prosecutor would recognize, and slid the original into our floorboard safe. I drafted a list, names, dates, parcels, permits, and beside each line penciled a question Victor would not like to answer. Caleb set a sandwich by my elbow. "You all right?" he asked. "I'm angry," I said. "Good," he replied. "Anger that reads beats anger that shouts." When I finally opened my laptop to shut down a headline, blinked from a news alert. Scrolling headlines later that night, I froze at 3 words: LM Technologies targeted acquisition. My father skipped my wedding, but he opened his mansion when it was time to buy my husband. The Georgetown house wore its welcome like a tuxedo, flawless, airless. A valet took our car, a butler our coats. Lydia my hands, and a ribboned box crystal flutes, belated congratulations as if cursive could erase history. Empty wedding chairs were now glittering crystal. The room remembered nothing. Chandeliers pooled light over Bordeaux and silver. Diana floated near. Arthur waited by the library arch. Victor crossed to Caleb first, grin calibrated for donors. "I've long admired your vision," he said. "What you've built from a small-town garage, remarkable. Grace has always had impulses. It's good she found a man with staying power." I didn't bite. Caleb's fingers brushed mine, then released, steady, polite, unshaken. Courses arrived like legislation oysters, bright as coins, lamb cut with disciplined cruelty. He raised his glass. "To partnership. Velvet word iron hook. LM could change procurement. Pair it with political shelter brand stewardship." His gaze slid over me as though I were a speed bump. "And excellent scales." Lydia leaned in. "A real seat at the table for Caleb," she said. "Grace imagined stability." "A legacy, I said. "You mean control." Her smile trembled. Victor's tone thickened. "A merger. LM Tech under an experienced umbrella. You, Caleb, is the engine. We handle the hill, the corridors learned over years. You focus on brilliance. We absorb the enemies." Caleb set his glass down. The sound felt like a compass settling. "I didn't build this to be anyone's pawn." The table went still enough to hear Crystal breathe. Victor's smile held, then curdled. "You misunderstand me," he said, the line men use when understood exactly. "Family isn't the enemy." His eyes found me casual as crosshairs. "Unless family insists on a scene." "I prefer transcripts to scenes," I said. "They age better." Lydia's hand landed on my wrist. Soft plea, hard purpose. "Gracie, please, this is a gift." Caleb answered first. "No. Gifts don't come with handlers." He looked at Victor like a machine that lies. "LM stays independent." Service froze. Victor set his glass too carefully, as if the table might take sides. "Always you," he said, mask slipping. "Always you, Grace. You turn men against me." Diana inhaled. Lydia's fingers withdrew like a tide. I didn't move. Arthur's reflection steadied in the cabinet glass. Victor tried laughter, found the wrong key. I offer protection, he said. You don't know what attention this contract brings. We do, Caleb said. We'll do it without selling our spine. He pushed his chair back, not rudely, just enough to break the spell. I folded my napkin with discharge paper neatness. Lydia half rose, then sat. At the doorway, Victor's voice followed frayed menace. Walk away tonight and you'll learn how small you are without me. I turned. I learned that at my wedding. Small isn't the word. Arthur reached for the door. I reached faster. Brass cooled my palm. For a breath, the evening balanced the crystal, the promises, the gravity of a man convinced the world is his mirror. Then the latch gave. September air rushed in. On the steps, the valet jogged forward. I waved him back. Caleb touched my shoulder. You sure? He asked. I'm sure, I said. Behind us, the door stayed ajar. Victor filled the light like a portrait, cracked but hanging. We walked without hurry. The night felt unscripted for the first time in months. At the curb, I looked back once, only once, to memorize that threshold. Somewhere inside a glass touched wood. Somewhere else, a phone vibrated with names that didn't matter. I threaded my arm through Caleb's. For the first time, I said, I'm not auditioning for a seat at his table. We're building our own, he answered. For the first time, my father's eyes cut at me, not as nuisance but as an enemy. The study where I once stood trembling was now the stage where he would tremble. Victor let us in with the authority of someone who had always owned the air. The mahogany shelves gleamed under the golden lamps, books lined like soldiers who had already chosen a side. I had been summoned to this room countless times as a child, usually to be scolded or measured against impossible standards. Tonight, I walked in steady. Caleb beside me. Arthur by the wall, quiet but immovable. Diana and Lydia trailed pearls and perfume masking fear. Victor didn't waste time. He fixed his eyes on Caleb. Let's be frank. Control of LM. You keep your title, your creative say. I manage enemies. We prevent exposure. Caleb's answer was calm. I've answered. No. The word sliced through the room. Victor turned to me, voice sharpened with contempt. She's poisoning you. Grace poisons everything. I met his stare. No. I learned poison here. Lydia gasped softly. Diana clutched her necklace until it clicked. Victor's mouth curved into a dismissive smile. We're not rewriting family history because you chose a mechanic with patents. It's never been about Caleb, I said. It's about control. Always. He stepped forward. You turned him against me. Always the scene. Grace. A memory rushed back, the science fair, my ribbon in hand, his glance sliding past me as though I were invisible. That humiliation had lived in my chest for decades. I steadied my voice. Scenes. You wrote them. I just survived them. You punished me where no one could see. You made silence my cage. Victor's lip curled. Arthur spoke for the first time, voice low but certain. Let her speak. I set an envelope on the desk. From it, I drew copies of the ledger. Your zoning deal. Altered votes. Forged signatures. Arthur erased at midnight. You built an empire by subtraction. Victor's eyes snapped to Arthur. Without context, every saint is a sinner. Context? I slid another page toward him. Emails from counsel. Euphemisms for fraud. You sold theft as progress. He reached for the papers. My hand stopped him. When I was 12, you used a belt. At 14, silence. Later, shame. You thought it made me small. It made me sharp. Diana's voice cracked. Grace, he was strict but never. Say it, I cut her off. Say beat. Say I saw. She stared at her pearls, lips sealed. Lydia trembled, whispering. Dad. Victor leaned on the desk, his stronghold turned fragile. You think copies can destroy me? I don't need to destroy you, I said. Truth collapses on its own. Arthur placed a faded photograph on the desk, he and Victor in youth, smiling with promises. The image lay beside the ledger like a ghost refusing burial. You betrayed him first, I said. You betrayed me next. You'll betray anyone who mistakes fear for loyalty. Victor shoved the photo aside. Enough. I won't be slandered in my own home. This isn't slander. It's record. Diana's eyes watered, but she said nothing. Lydia's face broke in realization. I stood taller, centering myself in the very place where I once cowered. My voice cut clear. You didn't just beat me with leather, Senator. You beat the child begging for your respect. And Mother, your silence cut deeper than any strap. Arthur bowed his head. Lydia covered her mouth, the mask breaking. Victor inhaled, chest rising for a roar, but nothing came. The lamp seemed dimmer, the shelves less obedient. I gathered the papers slowly. My trembling was gone. Patience was my weapon now. Caleb opened the door. I looked back once, only once, to watch my father's hands hover helpless for the first time. Victor's rage clawed for words, but none came. We walked out, and behind us his empire cracked, not with a bang, but with silence. They mocked my vows as an embarrassment, but it was their empire, not my marriage, that collapsed in silence. The television hummed softly in our Fayetteville kitchen, the morning light cutting through the blinds in clean stripes across the table. Caleb poured coffee steady as ever, while I sat with my palms flat against the wood, listening to the news anchor's crisp voice. On the screen, the Chiron blazed. Senator Halstead resigns, fraud investigation underway. The footage showed Victor's Senate chair empty under the camera's glare, a microphone angled toward absence. The man who once filled every room with arrogance was now reduced to an absence broadcast across the nation. Papers rustled, reporters leaned forward, but silence was the only statement he offered. Arthur's words came back to me like prophecy. He built his empire on betrayal. It won't last. The phone rang. I didn't need to look at the caller ID. Lydia's panic carried through before I even pressed the button. Grace, you don't understand. They've cut me off. My fiancé's family won't touch me now. Everyone says you poisoned father, that you engineered this. Her voice cracked into sobs, then sharpened into accusation. You've ruined everything, fix it. Tell them it isn't true. You're supposed to protect family. I closed my eyes, letting her words wash over me. I'll help you, I said slowly, if you learn to stand on your own. Not to save him, not to hide behind his name. Until then, you'll have to live with silence. She hung up. The dial tone hummed like a closing door. Caleb reached over, setting a hand on mine, not to console, but to steady, reminding me that choice was strength. Later, a letter arrived in a thin envelope, Diana's looping script etched in black ink. I chose appearances over you. I chose pearls over truth. I was wrong. She asked to meet. The cafe smelled of bitter roast and rain-soaked coats. She entered without her necklace, shoulders bent, eyes rimmed in red. For once, she looked small without the armor of elegance. She sat opposite me, trembling fingers around a cup she didn't drink. I told myself I stayed quiet to protect you. That silence was safety. But the truth is, I was afraid of him, and I let that fear cost me you. Her confession broke against the table like glass. My own heart ached, not for the girl I had been, but for the mother she had refused to be. You wanted me silent all my life, I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Now silence is my verdict on him. I forgive you, Mother, but I won't return to that house. She wept quietly, and I felt something unfasten inside me. Forgiveness wasn't for her. It was my key out of the past, but reconciliation that was hers to live without. Weeks later, in the backyard of the modest home, Caleb and I bought winter light gave way to the first breath of spring. Caleb tossed a ball for our young son, laughter rising over the fence. Arthur sat in a chair nearby, old eyes content at last. I stood watching them, the air warmer than any Senate hall ever was. We had founded the Arthur Halstead Scholarship Fund, named not for the man who betrayed, but for the brother who endured. Papers signed funds allocated a legacy born from fracture. Betrayal became seed truth the soil. I thought of empty chairs again, the front row of my wedding, the seat in the Senate. Their emptiness no longer cut me. It freed me. Victor never called. His silence once my prison had become his final sentence. I've told you my story, but now I'd love to hear yours. Share in the comments what you would say to me after watching my family's silence turn into my strength. Would you have walked out too? Tell me. And remember, betrayal doesn't define you. How you rise from it does. Stand firm, choose dignity over fear, and never let someone else's silence write your ending. Support me by sharing your thoughts. I'll be reading.